Hello, planet Earth. This is Dr. Aeronautics, and we are going on the next tutorial. This is the traffic pattern. I'm going to explain how to taxi the craft, the flight control surfaces, how to perform a takeoff, and then fly the traffic pattern that is flying an upwind, continuing up the runway line, flying a crosswind, turning 90 degrees, and then flying that way for a little bit, turning downwind, continuing another 90-degree turn so that we're flying the opposite direction we took off from, then turning base by 90-degree turn, and then turning final so that we line up with the runway, do an approach, and land. I'm going to do this totally visually without any instrument approaches, so sorry for you airline pilots, but my guess is that you probably don't need a tutorial on how to do a traffic pattern. Great. Okay, so F1 back into the cockpit now. I'm going to press F8 twice so that we get the screen up. Now what I'm doing, I'm not going to explain everything. That's what tutorial 0 was for. So the first thing I'm going to do is change my MFDs to be what they should be. So we're going to hit select and change this one to surface. And because we're going to do this visually, I don't care about the ILS and such. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into the maximum we can, which is zoom level 128. And this will show Cape Canaveral around us. And next I'm going to change the color of the HUD. That's Alt-H to red so that it's more visible. The air flight control surfaces are on. So now the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and begin closing some few things. So I'm going to close the inner door of the airlock there, like that. Verify that shuts. Good. Now we're going to close the outer door of the airlock. Verify that this shuts. Good. That has closed. Now we're going to go ahead and stow the ladder. And the ladder is down here. So we're going to flip it to stow. Now we get the blinking light. So the ladder is now in a process of storing. Okay, let's make sure that we have the light off. Good. Ladder is confirmed to be stored. Next we're going to close the nose cone. Move that to the closed position. Now our docking nose cone is closing, but we still have the vent open here. The vent is very good to leave open for taxiing. That way, when you're moving around, your life support system is open for the maximum, oops, a little bit too much zoom there, for the maximum time you possibly can. Because as soon as you start draining the oxygen tanks, you're on the clock. But it's not simulated in the stock Delta glider, so let's go ahead and close that now. So that's the top hatch right there. Close the top hatch. And this time I'm going to go inside, control arrow again. And now you can see we just stowed and closed. So let's go ahead and, that's nice. I noticed some ambient 3D sounds there. Go and just check here. I can't really see any indication in this craft that it's closed. But, oh well. Okay, so the next controls that you need to be aware of are the throttle controls. So that's Control Plus to increase the throttle and Control Minus. You can also press the plus button on the numpad, which will these control buttons, by the way, are using the numpad. You could also use the plus button, but that's highly not recommended for taxiing because it puts you into a very high power, it will basically instantly max your engine. It's the equivalent of flooring a car when you're trying to leave your driveway. Not a good idea. Or if you have a joystick, you can use the joystick slider if you know how to configure that. So let's go ahead and demo that. So you'll notice the main engine quadrant should increase. Control plus, and there we go. We're now moving. Now Control minus. Now we'll stop. So notice now I have the surface updated with true airspeed right now. So what it's actually giving us is wind speed. If I do GS and then update, actually, am I allowed to do that? Try true airspeed. Huh. Oh, I see what's going on. So you have to stop, and then once the craft knows that you've stopped, then it kind of resets to 0. Kind of confusing, but that's due to ambience of the wind in the simulation. Okay, so the air flight control surfaces are on, so we can maneuver. So that's control plus, control minus. We're back to idle. The retro doors are closed, so they won't open at all. And as you notice, as we move across the ground, you'll notice these angular acceleration rates move. This is because there's little bumps in the asphalt as we move across. So it's sort of telling you, hey, I noticed that we're bumping around. And that's normal, you know, when you're taxiing on an airplane, you kind of feel that. If you put a ball, like a tennis ball, on your tray table, which should be up while you're taxiing, you'll notice it rolls around when you're taxiing, and that's indicative of that. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to tell you about are the rudder pedals. You can use rudder pedals that come with or that you might get for a flight simulator. If you have a joystick that twists, you can twist left or right to add rudder. So basically what you're trying to do for steering on the ground is to get this to happen on the back. You see, when I'm doing that, it means it's going to steer. The next thing, if you don't have a joystick, it's going to be number pad 1 and 3. Number pad 1 will yaw/turn you left. Number pad 3 will yaw/turn you right. Okay, so that's about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to accelerate to about 10 meters per second because the wind speed is about 5. Remember that 1 meter per second is approximately 2.2369 miles per hour, so you want to keep it below 5 or 10. You could go faster in the stock Delta glider and not receive damage for it, but I highly advise not doing that because it essentially, if you want to turn quickly, it simulates damage. Or it doesn't simulate, well, sort of damage. Okay, am I moving right now? Okay, I'm not moving right now. So here's a problem, okay? When I'm just sitting here on the ground and I'm not really moving, but I'm still using my engines, that uses a lot of gas up. So don't do that. This thing isn't like a car. In a car, you step on the accelerator and then you stay on the accelerator for a certain little bit, and you'll top out. But it doesn't work this way in the Delta Glide because it's so overpowered. We're driving a spaceship. So if I control plus and put the engine setting high, I will keep accelerating and accelerating and accelerating and accelerating and will not top off. So the advised way to accelerate is to increase more than you need. Let your speed pick up a little bit. Okay, next. Period and comma will slow you down and stop you. So I had to stop because I noticed that we're not turning. I don't know why that is happening. So, in order to fix that, let's go ahead and open up the retro doors somewhere around here. There we go. And now you can see we got rockets in the front. And these are much less powerful. So if I hit minus sign a few times, we'll shoot backwards. And same thing before, full stop and comma, hold them down, wheel brakes, we've stopped. Press the home key, returns you to the front of the cockpit. All right, now I want to see what it is while we're not turning. So I'm going to use my joystick now for propulsion. Yes, that is most interesting. So my guess is that the realism of nose wheel turning is now simulated. So what are you going to do? It's a simple fix. There are two wheel brakes. The comma is the left wheel brake, the period is the right wheel brake. Don't forget to close those retro doors. These things can't be open when you're in an atmosphere and moving very fast. It's kind of like your door, right? You don't want your car door open when you're going down the highway at 70 miles an hour. We're going a lot faster than that. Okay, so I'm going to increase as before, this time using the joystick. There we go. Press the period. Now you can see we're moving. That's the difference between Orbiter 2010. There we go. Just let the speed pick up a little bit. This is still kind of, I won't say it's not in beta, but let me say this. Don't drive the Delta Glider 4 through here because you will totally get effed up. See, this is why I was complaining earlier about the mountain ranges not being fully realistic. I can't even drive, I mean, this is a taxiway. In real life, it's 100% flat. I can't even drive my craft across here. All right, so we're going to let ground speed notch up to about, let's say 5 meters per second. That's a good 12. Don't go above 10 because that's 22 miles an hour, which is about 20 knots, and that's where airliners are told not to go faster than that. Above that speed, you can get wing effects and such. Now, the takeoff velocity in the Delta Glider is about 120 meters per second because it's extremely heavy. I'm going to need more gas here. It is extremely heavy, and there's 6, 7, so now I'm throttling back, you see. Okay. So it's about 120 meters per second, and this is a very heavy craft. It's more like a flying train. That's 268 miles per hour. That's our takeoff speed. The Concorde was about 240. Okay, so this is going to be kind of picky here. So in order to get moving, I'm just going to throttle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set to hold 5 meters per second. There is an autopilot, but I'm not going to worry about that for the time being. I'm perfectly capable of being an autopilot. I am that in my car, so I really don't care. Again, wheel brakes will steer you around a little bit. And let's take a look at our fuel. You can see how much we're wasting here, right? Even though we're not accelerating, we're still using delta V, and that's because the ground is friction, and friction really F's things up big time. So we're going to get to the hold short line. There's no air traffic control simulated with this other than the annoying random ambiance, which is extremely irritating. The one that's like a okay, cops is closed and locked, and I'm off to go. And they do that all the time, and it drives me insane. Alright, so we crossed the hold short line, so what I'm going to do is start adding a little bit of left wheel brake here, and we're going to get over towards this side. Yeah, taxiing was way easier in Orbiter 2010. We'd be in the air already. Like I said, this is a learning experience for me as well as you. Like I said, keep that speed down, because if you really start to move, you could start banking, and you don't want these wingtips to hit the ground. Just don't. They're full of radioactive fuel. Okay, adding sharp right wheel brake. We're going to line up with the runway center line now. Press the home button, we'll return. And once you're lined up, right there, main engine cutoff, hold the wheel brakes, just tap them, and eventually this thing will display 0. Okay, the next few items are going to happen very quickly, so I'm going to describe exactly what's going on. What I'm going to do is hold down Control Plus until our throttle reaches 100%. We will accelerate to 120 meters per second. At 120 meters per second, I'm going to apply back pressure on the stick. I'm going to raise the nose to 10 degrees, so that's the plus 10 line. You can also use the number pad 2 and 8 until you get a good feel for flying. Ordinarily, you could use 2, but if you overshoot, you need to use 8, which is the pitch down. The one more thing that I'll say is the insert and delete keys work your elevator trim here. Remember earlier I said that affects the back pressure that you have to use. Since takeoff is a low-speed maneuver, we need more lift, which means we're going to add elevator. So I like to set it about there, so that the upper bound here meets the lower marking here, and that should give us a nice gentle lift off the runway. Once we're airborne, immediately I will throttle down to what is required to hold about 160 meters per second. Like I said, this thing is extremely overpowered. If you let your throttle up, you will begin accumulating airspeed that will damage your gear before it can stow, even if you press G. Now, you won't see damage. Well, I won't say that, because this is Orbiter 2016 and some things may have changed. In the past, you wouldn't see damage by accelerating willy-nilly. But in the XR2 Raven Star and the Delta Glider 4 add-ons, which are highly, highly, highly recommended, you will get damage very quickly. So even the XR2 is so powerful that even if you press Control minus on takeoff, you will not be able to throttle down in time. So I have to use my joystick for that. Once our gear is up, we're going to continue climbing to 1 kilometer, which is about 3,280 feet, and level off. And then I'll give some instructions from that. Okay, so let's begin. Control plus, full power. Looking for 120. I see 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. There's 120 pitching up, and it's going to take a little bit. It's very heavy. Okay, there we go. Throttling back. Now I put the gear up, holding 10 degrees. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the delete key a number of times. That's a bug. You can ignore what she just said. And that's going to keep me on an upward moving, or an upward path. Here is my altitude in meters. Here is my velocity in meters per second. And once we reach 1,000, we'll accelerate to about 250. So the flight dynamics have changed a little bit. So now what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the elevator trim with insert. And now we're going to go ahead and level off here and accelerate to 250 meters per second here. That's a good velocity to hold just off the ground. Okay, so that's it. So in the lower atmosphere, the Delta Glider behaves much like an airplane. We just took off now and we flew out over, this is Jupiter Inlet now. So let's keep track. That was runway 33. So now we're going to go ahead and turn 90 degrees east to 060. So that uses the 4 and the 6 keys to bank. Once you've reached your desired bank angle, then you want to use rudder, 1 and 3 keys. But I can do that myself because I have a joystick. So I get to experience the pride and joy of flying. So I recommend 30 to 40 degrees of bank for a pretty good turn. So now I'm going to go ahead and bank here. right? And that should be about good. Now I'm going to add some rudder so that we start turning. As I recall, there's no turn coordinator in this craft, but you really don't need one. We're starting to get kind of high, so I'm gonna pitch the nose down towards the horizon, and then we'll lose a little bit of altitude here. We're going east for 060 onto the crosswind. Nice 40-degree bank there. Flying out over the Atlantic Ocean at this time. All right, and we're getting close. So now you might be asking all this time, what is that crosshair there? Why are we not following it? But it seems to be near us. That is the direction we are currently heading. The little airplane that you see, which I'm moving up and down, and that crosshair follows, is the representation of our aircraft. Gonna release some elevator trim now. We're starting to get really high, and what it does is indicate us as with respect to the pitch ladder and the yaw tape. So now, what's that crosshair? The crosshair is our prograde velocity vector. Basically, if there were an object on the crosshair, that's what we hit. So the question is, why are we flying straight and somehow we're going to the right? And the answer is atmospheric wind, right? Let's go ahead and add, what was it, F9, the visual helper. Actually, before we do that, let's turn down. So now I'm going to turn again, add 90 to 60, and we get 150. So I'm going to turn to 150. I'm taking a big frame rate hit here. I don't know what's going on. Still says I'm getting 62 frames per second. I'm kind of highly confused. Okay, I just refreshed the recording to just in case. And there's 150. So now we're downwind. So we're now moving in the opposite direction that we took off from. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn on our force vectors. And here you can see now the lift, weight, thrust, and drag vectors, and that's kind of really hard to see. Yeah, this really doesn't help much. Maybe if I turned it on to... There you go. Well, even logarithmic, it's kind of hard to see. But if I pitch up, you can see the lift vector changing here. Kind of nice to play around with. Want to get to know how aircraft work. Anyway, we're moving this way at about 250, at about 600 miles an hour. Yeah, we're at about 5,000 feet, going 600 miles an hour. We're almost at the we're doing Mach 0.79. That's about the cruising speed of most airliners. So runway is somewhere out that way. And then we have about a 15 mile an hour wind gust in this direction, so we have a resultant vector. It's all vector addition. So if there were zero wind, if there was zero wind, we'd always be moving in the direction that we're heading. That's true with all cars, and that's probably why it's so foreign to most people, is because, you know, in your car you don't see that kind of thing. So very soon we'll be turning base, and then we'll be turning final, and then we'll be making an approach for the landing. And all we need to do is just decrease our airspeed to about 160 meters per second. When we get below 180, I'm going to press G to put the gear down. And I'm going to explain how to land as I'm landing. But I'm not going to tell you, like, pressing G to put the gear down, that kind of thing. Because that's the easy part. The hard part is actually sticking the landing and getting where you want it to end up. That's the hard part for most people. One thing I will say about the runways is they have visual indicators, the Poppy and the Bozzy. Those are the red and yellow indicators on the runway, and those line up. And I believe it's red over white, you're all right. If it's red over red, then you're too low. If it's red or if it's white over white, you're too high. That's the way it's supposed to work. Now, they're set for the space shuttle because the space shuttle used to use this runway. So the glide slopes are steep, even steeper for the Delta glider, which already has a very steep slope. They're so steep, in fact, that I believe astronaut Deke Slayton, while he was test landing the space shuttle, would basically said, well, I'm coming in too hot. I'm going to have to bleed off speed. So he bled off speed, and he could not make the runway. But it was okay, because they were in Edwards Air Force Base, which is in the middle of the salt deserts. And from what I heard, that was the last time he was behind the wheel of a spacecraft. Okay, so now we're going to add 90 degrees again. We're going to turn a quarter turn to heading 240. Again, about 40 degrees of bank. And we're going to turn. Just line that up. And now we're starting to get close to our landing. So as we get closer and closer, I'm going to begin reducing throttle so that we can begin sinking. Oh yeah, one thing I should mention about this, in aircraft you never want to shut the engine down while you're flying. In the Delta glider, we have a it's not continually combusting, so you can shut it off at any time. No problem. So there's 240. So to prove my point, there, I just shut the engine down. It's not running at all. We're just gliding. Hence the Delta glider. But we do need to stay aloft, so I'm going to add it back on again. Alright, like I said, we're going to do visual, so that's not our runway. Our runway's 90 degrees, that's our runway.
1,000.
And you will get attitude callouts as we come down if you have that configured in Orbiter Sound. That's just how it works. So as we get closer, you'll start hearing 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, but it doesn't sound as cleanly as most airplane callouts, where it'll be like, it won't be like that. Although it'll sound cleaner. Okay, we're lining up with the runway now. It'll sound cleaner, so turning 90 degrees to the runway heading 330. And this is a steeper bank. I'm doing it at 50 degrees because I waited a little bit too long. The XR2 will call them off a lot cleaner. All right, so once we hit runway 330, or the heading of 330, our goal is to establish a visual with the runway. We're starting to come in low, so I'm going to add more thrust here and pitch up so that we don't go into the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm going to slowly add more and more.
400.
Yeah, we're coming really low. Add more and more upward trim here. We're only about 1,000 feet above the surface now. In fact, we're we're too low for an approach now. So I have to go up a little bit. Alright, so there's the runway. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up. We're on final leg, by the way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line up, and this is the approach. It's kind of difficult. The front and the back lines of the runway. When the front and back lights align, that tells me that we're going straight down the center line. So it's to do those first. Then what we're going to do is continue flying forward until we hit the glide slope. That's going to be indicated by the poppy and the bossy. Okay, we're lining up right now. So I'm going to continue turning back to the west again. And when we're red over white, we're all right. We're probably going to go for red over red because the space shuttle had a very high angle of attack. And so what I want, because there's a little bit of a crosswind, is to actually put our velocity vector, because that's where we're actually heading, over the runway. So what we're going to do is we're just going to keep flying forward until we hit our glide slope. Once we hit the glide slope, we're going to reduce throttle, potentially reaching cutoff, and then like I said, at 180 we're going to put the gear down, come for a nice soft landing on the runway. Okay, so we're fully aligned. Just keep that crosshair right down the center line of the runway. Starting to get close now, so I'm going to bring back the throttle even more. Okay, so we're pretty much where we left off. We had a simulator crash. I forgot the D3, D9 client. Looks great on the eyes, but it does have the disadvantage of running out of virtual memory very quickly. So again, just like before, you can scroll the panel with up and down, waiting for that, going too fast, waiting for the visual lights to pop up. And I'd say right about now, we've hit the glide slope. So what we want to do is continue adjusting our pitch. What you want to do is keep that crosshair on the front of the runway.
$400.
Just keep it right on the front, down the center line.
300.
We're below 180, gears going down.
200. Radiator deployed.
It's so irritating. All right, and once I pass
100.
Once I pass the runway visuals, now I focus on the end
50,
of the runway.
40, 30.
Focus on that end of the runway.
20.
Touchdown speed is about 160 meters per second. Keep those wings level as you come in. Nice gentle touchdown. Cut your engines off, period, and whoa, whoa, whoa.
10.
Oh man, that was pretty cool.
10. 10.
Most interesting. Okay, so that's how you don't land. So I think what happened there is the runway isn't 100% flat and I hit a bump. I think that's what happened because I applied the wheel brakes. That was looking like a really buttery landing. I don't know what happened. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the destination. So now that we're done, turn the air flight control surfaces off. You can turn the HUD off with, I think, what is it? I thought there was a way to do it. F8. There we go. Just turn it to off. Go ahead and turn your MFDs off if you so care. And next we're going to open the nose cone. And for comedic purposes, let's extend our ladder and open the airlock doors. Okay. And everything is ready for us to climb out. So thank you guys for joining me on this episode. I will try and investigate what's going on and put the comments or put in the comments of the video and figure out exactly why we just suddenly flipped and ricocheted. I'm Dr. Aeronautics, and before I will see you guys next time, we'll adjust the elevator trim back to 0. And now I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Okay, so we crashed during approach because I forgot that I should use the D3, D9 client because I run out of memory. So here's a nice aerial demonstration of what you can do. Shows you what kind of power you're dealing with here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up and then we'll be in position for the end of the tutorial. So yep, just straight put the gear up. Pull a vertical.
Retracted.
Because that's how powerful this craft is. Just go straight back over the runway. So yeah, that kind of gives you the idea of the power that you're dealing with.